Okay, did you start already?
Yes, it did.
I cannot see it in
Hmm.
YouTube to say this for us.
Maybe. Let me try to check on my end.
Oh wait, it's doing something.
Oh, I'm seeing it here on the Restream
It's
service. I'm
working.
checking. Yep.
Okay, hello everyone. Apologies for the kind of rough start. We are trying a new tool to stream our videos, so we were not sure that it started, but it started all right. So thank you very much, Andy, for helping out with this. As usual, if you have any question, please put them in the chat or in the Matrix room. You can find a link to the Matrix room in the YouTube video, under the YouTube video, so feel free to do that. So let me just start the call by saying hello, everyone. So this is another community call, and today we will talk about how the CHAOSS project measure the health of open source communities. And we have here Ruth that is going to talk to us about that. Ruth is a community lead at CHAOSS Africa. And so hello, Ruth. Thank you very much for coming. Do you want to briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Francesca, for the introduction. And it's really lovely to be on this call with the Mozilla community members. I'm excited to talk about the CHAOSS project, a community lead at CHAOSS Africa, the local chapter of the CHAOSS project. And I'm also an open source program manager and a GitHub star. So I'm excited to give this short talk about the CHAOSS project, how we create metrics, and how you can get involved as well. So look forward to giving my talk.
Great, thank you very much. So before we jump to the talk, I will just go through briefly some community news and how you can be part of the Mozilla community if you are not a member yet. Let me. So here, can you see the slideshow?
Yes, I can.
So you can see, let's skip this. So if you're new to the Mozilla community, we hope you will like it here if you would like to join us. So we have a lot of projects you can join, and here you can see some example, for example, the MDN project. And so there are various ways in which you can explore more about what the Mozilla community is doing. You can join our newsletter, you can check our /contribute page, or you can get to know other Mozillians in metrics. Links for all of these is in the description. And please remember that our code of conduct applies to all Mozilla spaces. So just for some quick community news, we have a Fox Fooding campaign ongoing. What is a Fox Fooding campaign? Fox Fooding campaign is when we ask you to test some new products or features. We have one ongoing, but there are a few coming up the years. So if you want to check if there is an ongoing campaign, check our community portal, community.mozilla.org/campaign. At the moment, we are testing Firefox Relay Credential Manager. And the second community news, which is supposed will be exciting, especially for people in Europe, we are FOSDEM. We are going to be a FOSDEM this year, which is the largest open source conference in Europe. We will have both a stand and a dev room. So if you're planning to be a FOSDEM, come say hi. And with that, I will stop share and give the words back to Ruth. And if you have any question, put them in the places I already told, and I will pass them to Ruth when she finishes her presentation.
Yeah, sure. Let me get to share my screen. Give me 1 minute. Okay. I think is my presentation up now. Francesca, is it up? Okay, great.
Yes.
Sure. I was waiting to hear your voice. Well, if you see me looking here, that's where my screen is. Like Francesca said, I'm going to be talking about the CHAOSS project and, how we measure open source community health and, how we create metrics and how you can also get involved. So, brief introduction, which I already did earlier. So I'm Ruth Ikegah. I'm based in Lagos, Nigeria, and I am an open source program manager, a community lead at CHAOSS Africa, which is one of the local chapters of the CHAOSS project, which I'll talk better on towards my presentation. And I'm also a GitHub star, and I also do technical writing. So before we kind of go into the CHAOSS project, I wanted to kind of share how I started contributing to open source and, how I found the CHAOSS project before I go into details about the CHAOSS project. So basically, I think that was in 2020. Yeah. So I started learning Python in 2020 and, started coding, from a non-tech background, coming from microbiology. And then I stumbled upon, I knew about open source before I started tech. So when I started tech, I said, okay, let me try to get into open source and, make my findings, ask questions. And so I asked a couple of friends, and the first project I was, recommended, they recommended the first project to me, which is the Genome Foundation project. It's called, the project at that time was called the Scalable Onboarding Project. And we're trying to, make the Genome Foundation more inclusive to beginners that were trying out, that are trying to contribute. So that was the first project that I got involved with. And in the course of participating in that project, I realized that the Genome Foundation was also making use of the CHAOSS metrics, that was defining the process of that scalable onboarding project. And Shri, Shri is the lead on that scalable onboarding project, introduced me to the CHAOSS project. And that's how I found myself in CHAOSS. So, and I started contributing to open source. And, ever since my first contribution days, I've always been passionate about, because I think when I started contributing, although I had a first good recommendation, I could also see the issue where a lot of beginners like me were finding it hard to get started with open source, to get started with a project. So at that time when I started contributing, I thought about, creating a safer space and, a more inclusive experience for new contributors. And that's why I really have been in the CHAOSS project. That's why I have been here trying to create metrics and, participating and helping to create an inclusive environment for people to come into open source, to feel included, to be able to participate as well. So that's a short story on how I started contributing to open source, and I still do contribute to open source actively. So let's go into the CHAOSS project, and these are I outlined some of the foundations and companies that have supported the CHAOSS project in the past and even currently. And you can see that Mozilla is one of our the companies that have supported CHAOSS in the past. So you can see that Mozilla is still here, and that's why I'm really excited to, give this talk, this presentation to the Mozilla community members. And also there are other companies like Red Hat and foundations like the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation and the Ford Foundation that have been supporters of the work we do at CHAOSS. So the question is, so CHAOSS is, before I even go into this, CHAOSS is an acronym, which means Community Health Analytics in open source software. So at CHAOSS, we focus and we care about open source health, open source community health, and we create analytics and metrics that help define open source community health. Now, the different reasons why CHAOSS exists, it kind of attends to different folks in the open source ecosystem, both not just for community managers, both for contributors, both for communities, foundations, and companies, in the sense that for contributors, people want to, open source contributors, you want to know where they can, when people come into projects, they want to know, okay, how do I help? Where do I get started? How do I give quality to this open source project? So open source contributors, they want to know where they are making that impact. So the CHAOSS project, this is one of the reasons why the CHAOSS project exists, in the sense that we want to help open source contributors also understand where they should place their efforts and know where they are making the most impact, and know how to give quality back to this open source projects and communities. And for open source communities, the big thing is, when you have a community, you want people to be part of that community. You want them to feel included. You want to reward their consistent contributions. You want to ensure that you keep attending to their needs, and you keep rewarding people, valuable community members. So that's another reason why the CHAOSS project exists, in the sense that we want to help open source communities measure health among their community members and keep giving them the quality that they deserve. So for companies also want to, like, another reason why the CHAOSS project exists is companies also want to know how they can engage with communities, software communities. They want to know where they can create more impact. They want to also evaluate their employees, how their employees contribute to open source. They want to evaluate the work of their employees. They want to know where they can make impact, which communities they can support, which communities they can give back. They want to also want to analyze what is going on in these communities as well, the communities and the projects that they depend on. And open source foundations as well also want to do this. So those are like the different reasons, or why we created, or why the CHAOSS project exists. So at CHAOSS, we have a lot of moving parts. There are so many things going on, which is very interesting. There are so many places where you can find where to contribute and where to participate. Like I said, we majorly create metrics. We have software that you can use to get visualizations and get data answers to your questions. And we do that through working groups. So you can see here that we have two softwares at the CHAOSS project that would help you get visualizations and data from your open source project. So the first one is the mzl.la project, which is like a tool set, a software development analytics tool set, where you can get that gets data from different sources, from GitHub, GitLab, Slack, Discord, like different data sources, and kind of like collects that raw data, enriches that data, and kind of like give you visualizations, and help you properly see what is happening within your community. So that's one of the software. Then Augur is also another software that also helps you. It kind of like takes in data from different repositories, a group of repositories, and also kind of like creates some certain metrics based on the data that it has collected. So these are the two softwares we have at CHAOSS, the CHAOSS project, and they are all they are all written in Python. So these are projects that you can also get involved with. And for the metrics, these metrics are created, like there are different working groups that participate to create these metrics. We have about 6 of these working groups. The RICS working group, which kind of like creates metrics that are based on legal, like compliance of software, that attends to compliance and RICS in open source projects. And then the DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, create metrics that help open source communities, help them center DEI in their projects, in their communities, and help them foster that DEI collaboration. So that's what's the kind of metrics that the DEI working group creates. And then we have the evolution working group that tends to like evolution and then the life cycle of like an open source project. Then we have the OSPO. So OSPO means Open Source Program Offices, if you're not familiar with the term. So for this is quite a new working group that started late last year in December. Before, this working group was called the Value Working Group, but now it's called OSPO Working Groups. And this working group is for creating metrics that will be useful for open source program offices to kind of like evaluate health or where they are making the most impact and helping open source communities. And then we have the common metrics working group, and this working group kind of like creates common metrics that fits into almost all the other working groups. And also another new addition, which is the metric models. So we kind of this working group kind of creates models that show the CHAOSS metrics, all the metrics that we create at the CHAOSS project, show them in the real life sense, like in real life applications. So it creates like different models. So these are all like the working groups and the software that we have. This is how the CHAOSS project is structured. So like I said earlier, these working groups, like those different working groups, they kind of like focus on a particular category, be it like the RICS working group, the DEI working group, or evolution. They focus on a particular category and help create and define specific metrics in that category, and then also recommend and define these specific metrics, data collection, how you can. I'm going to show an example of a metric, so it doesn't feel like rocket science. So I'm going to show an example of a metric so you kind of like get how the metric looks like and how we kind of create these metrics. So like I said, for me, I'm more actively involved in the DEI working group, but I recently also started participating in the OSPO working group as well. So let's look at a metric sample. Before we look at the metric sample, like for each of the working groups, we kind of have like different focus areas, because like, for example, the DEI working group, there are a whole lot of things that you can think about when you say DEI. So we kind of like create like different focus areas that help us create these different metrics. And you can see for this focus areas like events, diversity, and you can see all the different metrics all the different things that can be measured as regards to diversity, equity, and inclusion in open source events. Like you can look at the code of conduct, and these metrics. We also have like the question, we ask the question, what does this metric aim to? What's the aim of this metric? So you can see the different metrics that are listed here that are under this focus area, the events diversity. And you can see also governance. Another focus area is governance, trying to identify how diverse and inclusive an open source project governance is. And then another focus area is like leadership and project and community, which are really important things. So basically how a working group, we have for each of these working groups, they have like specific meetings, like different meetings on different days of the week. And what happens, we have like a spreadsheet where we track all the different metrics. So what on a usual call, we come together and collaborate on a Google Doc, collaborating on the Google Doc, trying to define the metric, trying to give examples, data, how to collect data, how to analyze the data. So we give examples on these metrics. And when that metric, has come up to the point where it's set to go, we kind of like release it. We before we release it, we also give send the mailing list where people can also give feedback on how if there are things that we provide feedback on, things that we could improve, things that we could add before we release it out, and then communities are able to assess the metrics and use them. So like I said, I was going to show an example of what a metric looks like. So looking at issue label inclusivity. So most of the time, you see issues. Sometimes you see issues that are not properly labeled. There's no context to that issue. So if an open source project, or say for example, a community manager or Francesca wants to kind of measure how well the project issues that are labeled in the Mozilla community, how well it invites like new contributors to participate. You see the description, what are the objectives of this metric? These are like the different objectives. It should be newcomer friendly. Issue should have like at least diversity. There should be use of consistent labels. It should not have like a different label for a different issue. Then we kind of defined like the implementation. Okay, so I'm trying to go to the next. Okay, sorry. So it's also we also provide like tools, like I talked about the software we have, Grimoire and Ogre, that can provide this kind of metric for you, so you can choose to run an instance or start up an instance for your community with these softwares. And we also define the data collection strategies that you can use. So as a community manager, or as a community, if you're lost on how to measure your how inclusive your issue labels are your project, looking at this metric alone, you have some idea on how to measure inclusivity as regards to issue labels on your project. So how do you how do you get involved? There are different ways you can get involved. First, you can also participate with software if you're interested in writing code. The two softwares we have, like I said, are currently built with like Python. So if you're interested in engaging in those software or contributing to those software, you can participate in software. You can also participate in creating useful metrics that are helpful to open source communities. If you have like an idea, you can participate in any of the working groups, kind of like define you can pick which working group best suits you. Like for me, like I said, I participate in the DI working group. So you can choose which working group best suits you, and then you can participate in creating metrics, bringing up ideas that would help further that particular working group. And also we have local chapters. I mentioned earlier that I am the community lead for CHAOSS Africa, which is one of the local chapters that we have here in Africa, and we also have another local chapter in CHAOSS Asia Pacific. So if you're in the Asia Pacific region, you can also check out that local chapter. We also have like Twitter channels for the main CHAOSS projects on Twitter, and also at CHAOSS Africa on Twitter as well. And then we also, because all our meetings are recorded, like every working group meeting, they're being recorded, and we're usually open and we post them on the YouTube channel. So if you want to participate, you can go to chaoss.community/participate, and also the GitHub URL, which is CHAOSS at GitHub, and you can check out different projects that we have. And explore, check out the issues that we have and get started. You can also, when you check the participate page, you can also join the Slack channel and engage with other contributors, and find an area of interest that you want to participate in. So thank you so much for listening. This was a very short presentation, but thank you so much for listening. I'll take any questions now.
Thank you very much, Ruth. And hello, thank you very much for giving this presentation. This was really interesting. So I have a few questions. For example, you mentioned like you're involved in this working group on diversity. Is there some dimension of diversity in which you focus? You talk a lot about getting newcomers in, how you welcome newcomers, which I think is very, very important. But there are other dimensions of diversity that you look at.
Okay, yeah. So for me, I think for me that's like my main focus. But for like in the CHAOSS project, like there are different things we look at, like based on those focus areas that I shared earlier, like events, open source events, diversity, project governance, community, leadership as well. So those are like different focus areas that kind of guide us in the CHAOSS project. And we also create initiatives. So there's an initiative called the diversity, equity, and inclusion badging project, where we it's kind of like an initiative that badges events and conferences that practice diverse and inclusive. So it's like an application process. These events and conferences kind of like apply to get a badge, and we are also trying to release the one for project badging, where we get to badge projects that are open source projects that are diverse and inclusive. But then personally, I think I'm also interested in data, aside being inclusive, creating like a safe space or an inclusive space for new contributors, is documentation, right? So trying to make the documentation inclusive, trying to put in enough context in documentation so that people can run the software and people can use the software. So those are the areas I'm interested in personally. Then on the CHAOSS level, like there are so many other things that we do aside like newcomer inclusivity. There are other things, related to governance, related to leadership, project and community.
I think you can stop sharing your screen now. just
Sure.
Yeah, I don't see many questions at the moment, but I go ahead and ask. So you talk about, for example, one of the things I saw is like for virtual event, mention of diversity was be mindful of people in different time zones. And that's a thing, for example, that I see a lot in our community, because we have people from all over the world, and sometimes it's very difficult. We have meetings where someone is like have to wake up early and someone else is after midnight. So that is very important. So how do you deal with that? Do you have like guidelines where people
So something before creating those meetings, sometimes people come into the community when these meetings have already been set up, and sometimes it's hard to kind of like change the timing. But if, for example, if the meeting before creating these meetings also asks for like, usually we use like do polls to kind of like get different feedback from people on their preferred time, and then find like a good time that would fit in everybody. But in the case where, say, for example, a community member comes in new to the community and then the meeting times have already been created, I feel that it's also good to review those meeting times. Like something we do at the CHAOSS project is like maybe at the beginning of the year or towards a particular time, be like, okay, does this time work for everybody? And then people giving their feedback and like, okay, this time doesn't really work for me. And then we find another time, right? And then something else that also works is trying to record meetings as well. Like I said, at the CHAOSS project, we usually record all the working group meetings and we post them on YouTube, so that it's like open access to everyone to be able to, if, for example, I'm not able to make it to that meeting, I'm able to access the recording. And something else is like local chapters, which has even been helpful to the CHAOSS project. Like having a local chapter for Africa, has helped us, meet at our specific time. And even for the Asia Pacific community, they're able to meet at a time because like they are another different time zone, like towards like a very far time zone, so they're able to like meet at their own time as well. So these local chapters help as well to, for that time zone, and something we cannot avoid but we can always find a way to make things work.
And another things that I wonder if you take in consideration is like diverse access to data, to the internet, for example, where people were living in places where there is, low connectivity, or, data are very expensive. Is that something that, is that one of the dimensions that you take in consideration?
Yeah, that one is hard. Because for me, when I started contributing to open source, before I got my like a full-time job, I used to also struggle with like data, because then when you get on a Zoom call and everybody's video is on, it's kind of like consumes data. So I used to really struggle a lot with my data finishing so fast and me not having data to join community meetings. But I feel something that's I'm yet, or maybe I'd say I'm yet to work on is having, I feel incentives somehow help with like contributors that have maybe internet access bandwidth, like low connectivity or issues with connecting, sometimes incentivizing. And another thing is usually sometimes when I have like low bandwidth, community members, like we could put up our video to make the bandwidth better. And that's just like the kind acts, and then people do it, and then you see that that person is able to participate in the meeting as well. Or you could use the chats, the chats to also air your views as well. But that part is hard, I won't lie, because there's so much that can be done there. But because of the limits of communities, when you talk about the incentives part, it's kind of like limiting, because we're still thinking about funding open source, so you can't necessarily help everybody. So but that's something that could be something that we could look at. But for the meantime, trying to be friendly to people that you feel like their internet is poor, trying to maybe put up your video or encourage them they could use the chat, or put in on their meeting notes or something like that.
Yeah, that's really insightful. If I can, sorry, it looks like I'm interrogating you here, but I have a lot of questions.
No worries.
And so you mentioned a few programs that, for example, allows you to have a larger view of, for example, the data that are produced within various repositories, so you can see how healthy is a community. Usually, so if you can give me just a quick idea how this work, not you can do it in a technical sense. Of course, there are people watching who are interested in that, but I was thinking also how you define community, like how many people are contributing, in which way are contributing, and how do you put all that together to say, oh, this community is healthy and based on this data.
Okay, so usually, like maybe let me use an example like Remote Lab. So what it does is it's like a software that plugs in from different sources. So you have like your GitHub data, Slack, Discord, GitLab, like whatever, like different sources, and then it now gets in that raw data and kind of like puts in unique identities, matches them up, and enriches the data, and then gives you visualizations for that data. And sometimes when you look at for example, you want to know, say for example, want to measure how, or you want to know how contributors are, how many attracted contributors you have, or how many contributors are leaving your project. So these tools help you like look at a particular timeline of like, okay, this from, say for example, in the last 90 days, I noticed like it gives you like a pretty graph of the contributors. Maybe they're kind of like the graph is kind of like going down, or the bar chart's kind of like going down. And then you know that, okay, maybe people are just leaving, as people are coming, people are leaving. So it then tells you, okay, what do I need to work on, or what are the things I need to. So when you get that data, it helps you kind of like make decisions on, okay, this is the area, maybe I have so many contributors leaving, so how do I retain my contributors? What are the different things that I can look at? Or what are the things I currently do, and how can I improve them to retain my contributors that are leaving? So when you look at, okay, I have so many contributors leaving my project, and then you kind of strategize ways that you can make contributors stay in the project. Then maybe you might want to check who are your top contributors. Say, for example, you want to start rewarding contributors, spotlighting them. You could also check like with the tool, like the software, and see, okay, these are the people that have been contributing to the GitHub, Twitter, Slack, contributing to conversations, because that's another thing, like rewarding contributors help you retain them as well. So you want to maybe, once you are able to see and visualize that data, you're able to like make that decision that, yes, I can, these are the people that are my top contributors, and people that I can reward, people that, I can, encourage to give more contributions, or people that I can help that are leaving that I need to check up on, or people that I need to do something about, or strategize a new way to attend to their needs. So there are different things that you can do with the softwares, and maybe sometime we'll connect and talk about how you can maybe run up an instance for Grimoire for Mozilla. Maybe that would be great.
And you mentioned two different programs. I think, what are the difference between the two? They just apply to different repositories with different tools?
So, okay, I think the second one you're talking of is Augur. So Augur is, so the main difference I can spot out now, right now, is Augur kind of like for Grimoire Lab, it plugs in from different data sources, GitHub, GitLab, Slack, different data sources. But for Augur kind of like plugs in from group of repositories, and based on a set of metrics gives you that data. So I don't really have a clear view of the both of them. But yeah, so for now that's how far I can go.
Let me see if we have questions. I see. We have someone in Matrix that say, habla quiere, say, I hope I pronounced that right. I just pronounced it. I will pronounce it with Italian pronunciation. Apologies. Thanks for this presentation, Ruth. I'm watching with a small group of post-secondary students and novice programmers. Oh, that's awesome. Some of whom are learning about OSS for the first time. Do you have some suggestions on how they might be able to get involved without feeling too overwhelmed?
That's a very good question, because yeah, like I'm really passionate about trying to get beginners involved in open source. So for people to get involved, I think joining the community and finding, because sometimes it can be really overwhelming, like to join a particular community, especially when they have like different projects, different things, so you can get lost in those projects. But starting from connecting your skill sets or connecting what you can do to the project and finding a place where you fit in really helps. Like the littlest of contribution, just a typo, maybe trying to joining the community meetings. It's also one way we can participate, because I feel sometimes when people join open source project, they want to do everything at once, right? It's just that's really not the good way to go. You have to join the community. You have to watch how things are done, kind of like assess and just stay low for a while, read about the community. And then while you're doing your research, while you're trying to find out what the community is about and what they're doing, you're figuring out things along the way. Because, when we create open source software and when we create documentation, sometimes there can be things that can be improved, right? There are things that can be improved. So once you notice that there's something that can be improved, because it's an open source project, you can create an issue, right? So you can just go to the repository, create an issue and indicate interest to fix it. So looking for those small areas where you can start with contributing really helps. And then as you keep going, as you keep staying in the project, you keep finding ways to participate. Sometimes for some projects, they have like a list of ways that new contributors can get started. Like for example, something we do at the CHAOSS project is like we say, okay, try to join a meeting first, try to participate, you can facilitate a meeting, because usually the facilitation is done by like different people. So your first contribution could be like facilitating the meeting or taking up an action item, because when we create these metrics, there are sometimes we're like, okay, there's an action item to create a Google Doc or to create an issue or to fix a typo in something we notice. So during these working group meetings, there are usually small action items that we encourage new contributors to participate in. And some communities also have like newcomers channel where people can, indicate interest to fix something. And if there's like, I know usually when I open up issues in the CHAOSS project, I just paste the issue, like a good first issue. I just paste it on the newcomers channel. I'll be like, okay, any newcomer, this is a good first issue. Any newcomer can, pick up this issue. So I'll round this up in when you join the project, try to read about the project, right? Try to do your research. So while you're doing your research, you're also figuring out little areas that you can contribute to the project and you can participate, and it's easy for you to go to the project and open up an issue and fix that issue, and participating in their meetings if the project has meetings. It's really helpful as well.
This was really insightful, Ruth, and I think that's a really great thing to propose. I would say, you say you don't come for like a technical background. Well, I don't either. I am, and so I am a community manager, but I don't come from a technical background. Is there any advice for people who might feel a bit like they don't belong in an open source community, and how to deal with that?
Yeah, that's something I also like. Even though I write code, I also feel that sometimes, right? Because sometimes, in open source, you're in midst of people that have been writing software all their life, and you're like, okay, where do I fit in, right? So sometimes you can get that imposter syndrome. But I feel so something I do is I ask questions a lot. Like if I'm lost, if I'm confused, if I need help, I ask for help. And something with open source, like people are always very happy to help you. People are always very happy to know where they can help you be better. So asking questions and just trying to like I feel once you know you are giving quality to this project, like as long as you're contributing, you are giving quality to that project, even though it's just a typo fix. Like because there are some people that hate to read typos, right? So you've eased the burden of that person not reading typos. So remembering that you're also giving quality to that project, no matter how little you think something you have to put in mind. And while you're learning about the project, like for me, I've been in the CHAOSS project for like 3 years now, and there are still some things I do not have answers to, right? So it's sometimes you can stay long in a project and you might not know everything about the project, and that's fine. And if there's someone that knows everything, that's also fine, right? So trying to just give yourself that grace and believe that you're giving quality to that project, and also asking questions where you need help, where you feel lost, or things that you cannot really figure out yourself. Just asking questions and asking for help from people that are in the community.
Yeah, it's great. If I can. So we also have kind of a page for Mozilla project where there are various ways you can start contributing, and various projects you can look at is mozilla.org/contribute. And if you have some feedback on that page and something you think could be improved there, I'm also very happy to hear about those. So if you want to jump on our Matrix community room and let me know,
Yeah,
I'm
awesome.
always happy to listen.
Yeah.
And if I can, I saw something you have there about, having a code of conduct. And I also think that's really very important, that not always also a community needs to have a code of conduct that codify the way in which the people should behave in a space, but also that the code of conduct is enforced. So if you are entering in a new community, I would say familiarize yourself with the code of conduct.
Very important.
Which not just for how you should behave, but so you are aware that if people are behaving in a certain way towards you, which are the channel that you can use. And you know that and hopefully you end up in a community to take that seriously. And do you have done, we have still like 15 minutes. I think we can go ahead for like 5 minutes more if you're okay with it, Ruth.
Sure.
Do you have any thoughts about the code of conduct and the way it impacts diversity? And if you have any data, for example, that you've seen from the CHAOSS project coming out, looking at code of conduct, for example.
Something we did last year was to revise our code of conduct, right? Like something we kind of like revised it to be more inclusive. Something like I mentioned a project called the initiative, one of the initiatives that we have called the DI badging initiative, where we kind of like badge open source events and projects that are diverse and inclusive. And in the course of maintaining that project, I've seen open source events that we have given feedback, like because when these event applicants, when they apply for a badge, we usually ask the question about like, is your code of conduct, is it visible on your website? If people attend your events, like is the code of conduct accessible? Is it like, can I find it easily? And, does it have like the information that I need? So most of the time, we are able to give feedback on this events about like their code of conduct, ways that they could put in more information for people to kind of like find that information easy. And something I do personally is, sometimes people, it's easy not to read the code of conduct sometimes. So if I see, because we are diverse and inclusive, and we respect everybody's pronouns, all those stuff. So if I see like someone, maybe they do not know, right? Like they do not know that this is this is how I should address this person. I just kindly tell them, okay, because then you see there are some cultural biases sometimes when it comes to like DEI, where from when you're African, sometimes because these are not legal over here, like pronouns, having different pronouns are not like legal here. Sometimes when people come into communities, they are not aware of these different things. So sometimes you just have to, educate them, point them to the code of conduct and help them understand like these are different people's pronouns and these are what they mean. These are this person's pronouns, and you should address them by these pronouns, or then respect them, do not use violent terms, do not like. So there are sometimes where you also have to, aside having the code of conduct, have to like educate your community member. Maybe it could be having like a webinar, or someone come talk about like the importance of enforcing a code of conduct, right? So yeah, so that's some of the examples I can cite.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that answer. I don't see any more questions. Let me have a quick look. Also, because I noticed that the stream is a bit delayed.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm going to ask if there are any last questions. Giving a couple of seconds to see
No worries, sure.
anyone wants to answer. But yeah. What is in your t-shirt?
Oh, so it's She Code Africa. So it's like an NGO based in Africa that supports women in tech, giving them resources, trainings. So yeah. So this is a t-shirt from our last conference. So yeah, so that's it's the logo. It's like that.
That's a great logo.
Yeah, very good.
Okay, I don't see any more questions, so I think we can close here. But thank you very much, Ruth, for coming. Really, this was really, really interesting. And if we get any follow-up questions, maybe
Sure.
I can pass them on to you. And thank you very much, Andy, for the help.
Sure.
And now I will.
For joining.
Thanks and thank you everyone who is watching this video. After this is finished, the stream is finished, you can still go to our Matrix room and ask questions there. There are always friendly volunteers there and various community managers that are happy to help you out.